You use the word ambiguity. I think that's a really important thing when talking about paradise and the church and heaven and earth and all of these things, is that there's not like hard lines
Not
between
a
them.
system. Yeah, it's not a
It's
system.
not a system. And each layer participates in the other layers.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
All of that is going on at the same time. This traditional hierarchical understanding of the world and of what Christianity is, this is why it's also profoundly hopeful.
Mhm,
Because if your world has a hard ceiling, there's no hope in this world.
mhm.
There's just waiting. Someone who has no hope in this world and is simply told, "Well, just
Till
wait.
you die. Yeah, that's
Wait
right,
until you
yeah.
die and then it's gonna be better." Like,
Mm,
this is the satirical, parodic, reduced version of Christianity that a lot of people very rightly don't believe in. But, Orthodox Christianity with all of with the iconography, with the ritual participation, with the architecture, with the music, with its asceticism, with its hesychasm, all of this says paradise is on earth.
mhm, yeah.
Because of our sinfulness, we're not completely there yet, but it does kind of peek through. It does, and occasionally it blazes through.
This is Jonathan Pedro. Welcome to the Symbolic World.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with Father Andrew Damick. All of you obviously know him from his multiple online places, especially Lord of Spirits, but also he's been doing all these great podcasts with Deacon Seraphim. If you want to check out Looking at the Great Tales, they've done pilgrimages all over the place, so definitely great stuff to look at. But he is going to be with us at the Symbolic World Summit in Oxford at Pusey House in a few weeks now, and so we're really excited about this. It's going to be such a great event. We're going to have, obviously, Martin Shaw is going to be there, Aidan Hart. We have Father Jacob Siemens, Deacon Seraphim, of course, myself, but then other people. Heather Ponting's going to be there. Paul Kingsnorth is coming. Mary Harrington said she's going to show up one day. So it's going to be like a real amazing,
It's the
amazing time,
Avengers.
all in the land of C.S. Lewis. The pub is going to be right there. We're going to go and hang out at the pub, and everything's going to be great. So Father Andrew, I can't wait for us to do this together. It's going to be a great fun.
I'm pumped. Oxford is a place that has always been kind of a mythical place in my imagination. I've gotten to visit once, so I'm really, really happy about going back.
And what else? Wouldn't you want to be there with Martin Shaw, who's going to take us around? He's going to show us like all the different Inklings, places. So it's going to be so much great. So it's September 24th to the 26th. We still have some tickets left. They're going fast. Yeah. At first we were a bit worried, but finally they are selling. So if you want to come, please do. But today I thought that we could let's say tease a little bit the subject of the event, which is imagining paradise, and talk about the image of paradise as it appears in other stories, not specifically Christian stories, but how this kind of desire or image of paradise appears. And so, Father Andrew, you chose a few stories for us to go through. So take us through.
Yeah, so we've got a fairy tale and a Norse saga today. So,
Good stuff.
yeah, so this should be fun. So the fairy tale is, so if anyone's familiar with the Andrew Lang colored fairy book series, this is in the yellow fairy book. And it's often called The Glass Mountain. So the yellow fairy book was published in 1894. And for those who don't know the work of Andrew Lang, he's collecting all these fairy stories from so many different cultures, right? And a lot of us who grew up reading fairy tales read Andrew Lang. There's the blue fairy book, the purple fairy book. It just goes on and on and on. There's hundreds and hundreds of these stories. And this particular one, The Glass Mountain, there are lots and lots of versions of this story. There is a whole fairy tale type that it's numbered and lettered or whatever of this particular kind. And almost every culture, it seems, has some version of this. And the reason why I thought this was an interesting one is that it comes from a part of the world that is not just a part of the world that my own ancestry is from. So my paternal ancestry is from Lithuania, and then my maternal ancestry is from Prussia, directly to the west. And this particular version of the tale is from Poland, and so it kind of reaches in all this area. But this one is different And we'll talk about how it's different after we actually tell the story. But this one is different from in fact, from most other versions of this particular story. So if you know this fairy tale, if you grew up reading this or hearing this, you might be familiar with the story, but maybe not this particular version, unless you're reading Andrew Lang's Yellow Fairy book. So I'm just going to read it. It's not actually that long. We can just go. I'll just go through it, and then we can talk about it then at the end. All right. Okay. Here we go.
Story time with Father Andrew.
That's right. Once upon a time, there was a glass mountain, at the top of which stood a castle made of pure gold, and in front of the castle there grew an apple tree, on which there were golden apples. Anyone who picked an apple gained admittance into the golden castle, and there, in a silver room, sat an enchanted princess of surpassing fairness and beauty. And she was as rich, too, as she was beautiful, for the cellars of the castle were full of precious stones, and great chests of the finest gold stood round about the walls of all the rooms. Many knights had come from afar to try their luck, but it was in vain they attempted to climb the mountain. In spite of having their horses shod with sharp nails, no one managed to get more than halfway up, and then they all fell back right down to the bottom of the steep, slippery hill. Sometimes they even broke an arm, sometimes a leg, and many a brave man had broken his neck even. The beautiful princess sat at her window and watched the bold knights trying to reach her on their splendid horses. The sight of her always gave men fresh courage, and they flocked from the 4 quarters of the globe to attempt the work of rescuing her. But all in vain, and for 7 years the princess has sat now and waited for someone to scale the glass mountain. A heap of corpses, both of riders and horses, lay round the mountain, and many dying men lay groaning there, unable to go any farther with their wounded limbs. The whole neighborhood had the appearance of a vast churchyard. In 3 more days the 7 years would be at an end, when a knight in golden armor and mounted on a spirited steed was seen making his way toward the fatal hill. Sticking his spurs into his horse, he made a rush at the mountain and got up halfway. Then he calmly turned his horse's head and came down again without a slip or stumble. The following day, he started in the same way. The horse trod on the glass as it had been level earth, and sparks of fire flew from its hoofs. All the other knights gazed in astonishment, for he had almost gained the summit, and in another moment he would have reached the apple tree. But of a sudden, a huge eagle rose up and spread its mighty wings, hitting as it did so the knight's horse in the eye. The beast shied, opened its wide nostrils, and tossed its mane. Then, rearing high up in the air, its hind feet slipped, and it fell with its rider down the steep mountain side. Nothing was left of either of them except their bones, which rattled in the battered golden armor like dry peas in a pod. And now there was only 1 more day before the close of the 7 years. Then there arrived on the scene a mere schoolboy, a merry, happy-hearted youth, but at the same time strong and well-grown. He saw how many knights had broken their necks in vain, but undaunted, he approached the steep mountain on foot and began the ascent. For long he had heard his parents speak of the beautiful princess who sat in the golden castle at the top of the glass mountain. He listened to all he heard and determined that he too would try his luck. But first he went to the forest and caught a lynx, and cutting off the creature's sharp claws, he fastened them on to his own hands and feet. Armed with these weapons, he boldly started up the glass mountain. The sun was nearly going down, and the youth had not got more than halfway up. He could hardly draw breath, he was so worn out, and his mouth was parched by thirst. A huge black cloud passed over his head, but in vain did he beg and beseech her to let a drop of water fall on him. He opened his mouth, but the black cloud sailed past, and not as much as a drop of dew moistened his dry lips. His feet were torn and bleeding, and he could only hold on now with his hands. Evening closed in, and he strained his eyes to see if he could behold the top of the mountain. Then he gazed beneath him, and what a sight met his eyes! a yawning abyss with certain and terrible death at the bottom, reeking with half-decayed bodies of horses and riders, and this had been the end of all the other brave men who, like himself, had attempted the ascent. It was almost pitch dark now, and only the stars lit up the glass mountain. The poor boy still clung on as if glued to the glass by his blood-stained hands. He made no struggle to get higher, for all his strength had left him, and seeing no hope, he calmly awaited death. Then all of a sudden, he fell into a deep sleep, and forgetful of his dangerous position, he slumbered sweetly. But all the same, although he slept, he had stuck his sharp claws so firmly into the glass that he was quite safe not to fall. Now, the golden apple tree was guarded by the eagle, which had overthrown the golden knight and his horse. Every night it flew round the glass mountain, keeping a careful lookout, and no sooner had the moon emerged from the clouds than the bird rose up from the apple tree, and circling round in the air, caught sight of the sleeping youth. Greedy for carrion, and sure that this must be a fresh corpse, the bird swooped down upon the boy, but he was awake now, and perceiving the eagle, he determined by its help to save himself. The eagle dug its sharp claws into the tender flesh of the youth, but he bore the pain without a sound, and seized the bird's 2 feet with his hands. The creature in terror lifted him high up into the air and began to circle round the tower of the castle, and the youth held on bravely. He saw the glittering palace, which by the pale rays of the moon looked like a dim lamp, and he saw the high windows, and round one of them a balcony in which the beautiful princess sat lost in sad thoughts. Then the boy saw that he was close to the apple tree, and drawing a small knife from his belt, he cut off both the eagle's feet. The bird rose up in the air in its agony and vanished into the clouds, and the youth fell onto the broad branches of the apple tree. Then he drew out the claws of the eagle's feet that had remained in his flesh, and put the peel of one of the golden apples on the wound, and in one moment it was healed and well again. He pulled several of the beautiful apples and put them in his pocket, and then he entered the castle. The door was guarded by a great dragon, but as soon as he threw an apple at it, the beast vanished. At the same moment, a gate opened, and the youth perceived a courtyard full of flowers and beautiful trees, and on a balcony sat the lovely enchanted princess with her retinue. As soon as she saw the youth, she ran towards him and greeted him as her husband and master. She gave him all her treasure, and the youth became a rich and mighty ruler. But he never returned to the earth, for only the mighty eagle, who had been the guardian of the princess and of the castle, could have carried on his wings the enormous treasure down to the world. But as the eagle had lost its feet, it died, and its body was found in a wood on the glass mountain. One day, when the youth was strolling about in the palace garden with the princess, his wife, he looked down over the edge of the glass mountain and saw, to his astonishment, a great number of people gathered there. He blew his silver whistle, and the swallow who acted as his messenger in the golden castle flew past. "Fly down and ask what the matter is," he said to the little bird, who sped off like lightning and soon returned, saying, "The blood of the eagle has restored all the people below to life. All those who have perished on this mountain are awakening up today, as it were, from a sleep, and are mounting their horses, and the whole population are gazing on this unheard of wonder with joy and amazement." The end. So there
That's
you go.
amazing. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, and the thing that struck me about this, and the reason why I thought we should talk about it, is when in researching the folklore of this region, even the pre-Christian stuff has this sense that the home of the gods, or some kind of earthly paradise, is on a glass mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And so even this has some pre-Christian echoes for sure. And so even though maybe when someone reads this fairy tale, they wouldn't think, oh, that's paradise necessarily, the people who originally heard this fairy tale and were telling it and adjusting it as over the centuries went by, they would have all had the sense that this is about some kind of paradise. So what are your initial thoughts about this? I mean, one thing I wanted to point out is that most versions of this story that maybe you've heard or read, or maybe some of your listeners have, the way that you win the princess is that you get a magical horse, and the magical horse takes you to the top of the mountain, and you get the princess.
Yeah.
But in this one, notice the guy with the impressive horse is the final loser.
Yeah.
The one with the golden armor, he's the final loser. And the one who makes it to the top crawls his way halfway. And then, of course, the eagle takes him the rest of the way. So I don't know. What do you think about that difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of. I mean, just we could start with the glass mountain. Obviously, the question people would ask is why a glass mountain, and we have that in the Bible in terms of this idea of a reflective surface, the idea of a stone that's polished that becomes a mirror. And so the idea of the glass mountain is that it's a mirror of heaven, right? It actually is the earth, but the earth to the extent that it reflects the light, right? To the extent that it reflects light and that it reflects that which is above. And therefore it is both the earth, but also not the earth, because it is closer to heaven, and therefore it is not easily amenable by the means of earth. You don't have access to it easily because it is this place that reflects heaven. Obviously, you see versions of this in all the symbolism of precious stones. All of this idea of the precious stones when in the book of Isaiah, when God describes paradise as a mountain, a bejeweled mountain, right? You have this kind of image as well, and so that's the first thing to say, right? And then the second thing that I think is definitely very interesting is the way in which the one who, how can I say this? It's as if there is this idea of humility and ascetic practice that you see as he goes up, right? The importance of the him being thirsty, and in some ways, let's say, leaving earth in that sense. I put some of that in my Jack and the Beanstalk version, which is that it's so high that he fasts basically for several days going up into heaven. And so that fasting is in some ways a way of leaving earth, you could say, right? Kind of moving towards heaven.
I caught that as well. And to me, actually, although you couldn't make a one-to-one identification here, I think that this version maybe represents actually a Christianization of the tale, and that the boy who makes it is a Christ figure in a certain way. So there's a real emphasis on his suffering, that he's bleeding, that the effort is difficult, of course, but that also he's harmed by the eagle. And he's thirsty while he's up high, right? So just like the Lord, he's on the cross and he says, I thirst, but is not given something really good to drink, but instead is given vinegar, the whole point of which being it's actually to asphyxiate someone who's crucified so that they would die faster, right? I read this as you said, is about a kind of asceticism, and in some ways a negation of the pagan heroic idea, which is basically if you're magical enough, then you can do great things. But the magical guy is, like I said, he's the last loser, and it's almost in some ways, for me, it's an indication that paganism is reaching towards paradise. Like it's not like pagans are all these evil people. Pagans are trying to reach towards something better too. They're human, right? So they have the desire for God. But it's almost as if to say that paganism couldn't quite do it, even with all of its heroism, even with all of its glory that it had. And paganism absolutely had a lot of glory. But it takes this suffering servant. And he's lesser. He's not a king. He's not a noble. He's
the
a
smallest
boy.
one for sure. I mean, that's the fairy tale trope, but sometimes it's hard to understand that there's the humble aspect of the little one. How because he's humble, he has access to some mysteries that the brave knight doesn't have. I really love the image of, because there's something about heaven, obviously, as especially as Orthodox Christians, especially like modern Orthodox Christians. The more terrifying aspect of divinity and the more terrifying aspect of heaven is one which we don't want to deal with as much, because of all kinds of reasons. But, it's there in scripture, right? It's there in the tradition. So we shouldn't completely put it aside. And I think that in this, there is this sense in which there's a little trickery also involved in this, which is that the way that the knights do it in this affront. It's like they're scaling the mountain with their power, right? And then the way that this little man does it is that basically he uses the wrath of heaven in some ways against itself, right? He basically waits for the law to fall on him and to pierce him, and to basically pick him up, and he actually submits to that suffering in order to ascend the mountain. And so I think it's a really kind of powerful image of a different way of approaching this.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that there are two guardians, to the mountain. There's the eagle and the dragon, right? So, yeah, the eagle, I was having actually trouble kind of interpreting the eagle, but I like what you said here, because I was thinking, okay, is this death? Yes, there's a sense in which this is death, but I think the idea that it's sort of the curse of the law.
Yeah, it's the ruthlessness of heaven. This is something that I've talked about it a few times in my videos, which is that heaven is sometimes represented as a raptor, that it's like it's heaven that's going to come and take from you. When in some ways, when Samuel talks about kingship, when he talks about David, and he says basically, if you want a king, you want something above you, well, that thing above you is going to come and eat your children, right? It's going to come down and take from you what you haven't given. And if you think about some of the mythological elements, right, in the image of Prometheus, right? So Prometheus doesn't sacrifice properly, and then the eagle comes and takes its sacrifice, right? It's going to come and take its meat. If you don't give to heaven, heaven will come and take from you. Like, that's just how the world works, right? And so I think that there's an image of that kind of going on, which is that there is a way in which heaven can pull things out of the earth, when they're, let's say, not manifesting what they're supposed to manifest. And so I don't necessarily have a problem with that, because I see it in the Bible quite a bit. That type of, it's harsh. We don't like that aspect of heaven, but that's what if you don't, heaven is judgment too. Heaven is like it's a standard, and if you don't fit the standard, then sometimes the eagles come and pick the seeds out of the earth, like in the parable of the seeds.
And what's really fascinating is if you look at, I'm not sure which edition I was looking at of the Yellow Fairy book, but the illustration that's included for this story, if you just glanced at the illustration and not read the story, you would have thought you're looking at Prometheus chained on the mountain with his liver being eaten out by an eagle. Right. That is exactly what the image looked like. You see this person stretched out, and there's an eagle coming at him. It looks exactly like that mythological image. And I'm sure that was probably deliberate on the part of the illustrator. I hope it was. Anyway.
No, I think it is. I think it is, because in some ways it's a play on that pattern, which is that in some ways the character lets heaven get its meat. Yeah. But this is the trick, is that if heaven gets its body, right, if it comes and takes the body, it's a double game, right?
Right.
Now you're attached to the thing that's going up, right? And then he basically rides that suffering, of submitting to judgment and to the law, and then rides it all the way up to heaven.
Ultimately, death is the curse of the law, right? Death is the effect of the way that the law, the Torah functions in the world, which is it brings death. But in the story, and of course in the story of Christ, death is the passage, and this plays out in multiple ways in the story. Death is the passage to ascent, the passage to life, the passage to resurrection, all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting to me, like there's the fun detail of when he's ready to kind of land on the mountain, he cuts the feet off of the eagle.
Yeah, well, to me that's related. There's a mysterious element in the Jack and the Beanstalk story, which is the cutting of the beanstalk, and I think that this is related to it. Worst case scenario, it's a real Promethean type of gesture, like a revolutionary gesture. Best case scenario, it's something like the transformation, right? Which is that in some ways he is now going to become the king of this castle. He is now going to replace the order that was there before, and therefore he kills the former order, and then takes the place of that order.
Yeah. Or in the language of the scriptures, the law was sent to us as a tutor, but now grace has come in the person of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's a better. I like that. It's a more Christian one. So I'm in like pagan, ruthless world here.
I mean,
that
both
I'm
are
talking
true.
about.
Both
Yeah,
are
yeah,
absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
the sense of the death having a sting and the grave having victory or whatever. Like, this is not just a thing that St. Paul says to kind of be triumphant or whatever. This is the experience that everyone is having,
yeah.
right? And we still experience the sting of death, because death still takes us all, but ultimately fails because of Christ. Yeah. So then the boy, he gets to the top of the mountain, and there's a tree with fruit on it, with apples on it. So this is kind of the most maybe obvious part of the paradisaical imagery,
Yeah,
eh,
and this image of I love how the idea of the golden apple is so obvious, and it's weird. I think it's really fairy tales that have helped me understand the relationship between the more pagan images of the gardens, with the golden apple, and of course the biblical image of the gold, like the idea that the fruit have been golden, like that. So I really love that. I think it's perfect, and of course it's more like the tree of life, obviously in this version,
exactly.
because that's why he can heal himself with the
Right.
peel of the tree. Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Right. Exactly. And then I love, um, I love the detail if he gets to the gate of the castle and there's a dragon there, which you think, oh, it's a dragon. Now this is going to be another big scene. No, he just throws an apple at the dragon and it has to take a hike,
Yeah,
which, there is a dragon guarding paradise,
yeah,
right?
that's right. That's right.
That's what it says in the scripture.
I know.
There's a seraph, right? And what is a seraph? I mean, that's a flaming serpent. That's a dragon, right? And because the way is now open to the tree of life. The way is open. Although in this case, the tree of life is kind of outside, or yeah, it's outside but inside at the same time. Like, it's on the mountain, and yet there's a kind of holy of holies that he's entering into. The
It's like the
bridal
key. It's like
bridal
it's as
chamber.
if the apple is the key. If you think about
Yeah,
how, there's these images sometimes we have of Saint Peter coming to the door, of Hades. You see that in the icons of the Last Judgment, and he's got the key. It's like
yeah,
he reached that, he went through the right thing, and so now he's one of those people that's allowed to enter into the into
yeah.
the the kingdom.
Yeah, and then so then our hero, who could be understood as Christ, enters in, and there is his bride, full of all of, as it says in the scripture, all the treasures of the nations, right, are all there, and then there's this, it's the bridal chamber, right? So there's a nuptial union between them, and it's interesting to me, the detail. I want to get your take on this, that he can't go back down the mountain. Um, so
Yeah,
what do you
well,
think that's all about?
you cut the feet off the eagle.
Well, yes, that's what it literally
That's right,
says
you
in the
cut the feet
story.
off the eagle. So in some ways, this is. You could say that this is also. I think that it's a powerful story because it's not moral. Like a lot of the fairy tales are not moral. They
Yeah,
What they
yeah.
do is they also exemplify some of the problems, which is that when you go up, when you go up the hierarchy, or when you go up into the intellect, when you go up, let's say you become a mathematician, you succeed, you reach the pure intellectual world. The problem is coming back down. It's a real problem, right? It's a real problem to then be able to reconnect, you could say, heaven and earth. So because going to heaven isn't always just good.
Hmm.
It's about going up, but sometimes that necessarily the image is the union, right? That's really the image that we see in the heavenly Jerusalem. That's really the image we see in the resurrection, is that going to heaven isn't really the final stage.
Right.
The final stage is that you go into heaven, and then you basically reunite the world together.
Yeah, I think this is part of what's going on when Saint Mary Magdalene sees Jesus after he's risen from the dead,
Yeah.
which is this is a weird passage, I think, if you don't get this sense. And it doesn't say that she reaches out to him, but he says, "Don't touch me." And it really, my understanding is, it should be kind of translated something like, "Don't cling to me."
Hmm.
Um, and then he says, "Because I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." And so there's a sense of his ascent that's imminent, means that this kind of grasping earthly connection is not appropriate now, And I have to say, I mean, this might be a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I have to say, one of the experiences I had in my life was 8 years ago, I went to Simeno Petra Monastery in Mount Athos, and they have the hand of Mary Magdalene there. And that hand is incorrupt, not only in the sense that it still has flesh on it, the flesh remains flexible. So this is a 2,000-year-old relic, but also that the flesh actually maintains body temperature.
What?
And it's not just something I heard. It is something I personally experienced. I was kissing a whole series of relics, and then this one is warm,
Hmm.
and I had the thought at that time, was this the hand that reached out to touch
I mean,
the Lord who is ascending? And I
it's
think,
obviously
well,
hard not
it
to
has
think
to
that's
be.
it. I mean, it's a hand, right? If it's their hand.
It has to be. It has to be.
Yeah, it's astounding that they have that relic. My goodness.
Well, they take it out once in a while off the Holy Mountain and bring it to various places. But yeah, so if anyone's ever there, or happen to be someplace that they're taking it, that's the real deal. Again, it's not something I just read or heard about. I personally experienced that. And then you got the last.
Father Andrew, you have no idea how the fact that you're saying all this is just so wild because of cutting off the feet of the eagle. It's just hard not to see
Right.
that in some ways Christianity is different for that reason. This is the difference between Christianity, and a lot of other religion or other way of thinking. It's the mysterious connection, this mysterious connection that we see in the relics, which is in some ways that the thread is cut, but it isn't. That even in death there is a mysterious connection that's possible between the saint and their body, between heaven and earth. So it's something to think about.
And this, doesn't this kind of take us into the last detail of the story, right? Where the new prince, he discovers that the people down at the bottom of the hill, at the bottom of the mountain, who have been touched by the blood of this eagle, who was wounded because he cut his feet off, that they've come back to life.
Yeah,
everyone is restored.
Amazing. Yeah, it is definitely amazing. I think we can interpret it from a purely cosmological symbolism, which is that the idea that the world is made of cycles and of transformation. That at the end of a cycle, basically you cut it off, and that's how you begin a new world. Some things have to end, so that other things can begin. That's definitely one aspect of it. But I also think that for sure there's something of a sacrifice that's going on there. There's definitely a whole imagery of sacrifice about heaven in some ways bleeding for us, which is it's hard not to see Christ in that story.
Yep, exactly. So anyway, I thought you might like this one.
Love that.
Yeah,
Too.
yeah. It's a cool story.
Great tale.
So,
and I love the image at the beginning when you have this image of the glass mountain. You kind of obviously imagine it to be so super smooth, and then the tree and the castle, and then all these dead bodies at the bottom. Right? It's like this perfect image of a cosmic image.
Well, and one of the things about it, of course, is that it in this story, everybody's able to make it up to some extent. It's not that they just slide down as soon as they put their hoofs, usually on the mountain. And so there is a sense in which some kind of ascent is possible, even under sort of natural human means.
Mm-hmm.
That human beings are not totally depraved.
That's right. Well,
frankly, they're not totally depraved.
Yeah,
one can reach towards glory, but you can't reach it. You can't reach glory without divine grace, right? Okay, so the other story that I have.
All right, let's go.
This one's a little bit.
You got some competition, which is your first story. Now this better be good.
I know this one's really good as well. This one's much more. Well, we'll see as we go. This one is a little bit longer. So what I thought we would do is, because it's kind of divided into 5 sections, as you would take it one section at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So you won't know what's going to happen next unless you've read this one before. I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
And so it'll be interesting to kind of hear your responses to it in the moment, right? So this is called in Norse, Old Norse. This is called Eirik's saga Vithforla, which means the tale or the saga of Eric the Traveler. Eric the Traveler. And this was written about the year 1300. And And so this is firmly within the Christian era of the Icelandic people. But I mean, this is roughly contemporary with the prose Edda and all this kind of stuff. It's from that same era,
Yeah.
where we know anything about Norse mythology. There's piles and piles and piles of sagas, in addition to what we normally think of as kind of the Norse myths. And most of them are much longer. And of course, the word saga, it just means a thing that is said. So these are stories that are told out loud. That's the whole point of them. And but this is a relatively short one, which is why I was okay with even reading. I'm not going to read all of it. I'm going to read most of it. We're going to skip over some parts of it.
Usually, the word saga also implies like
it's long. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, this one is actually a very short saga, in fact. And just to kind of give credit where credit is due, this one was translated by a man named Peter Tunstall. And so this is the translation that I'm reading from. So part one is called Eric's Vow.
Hello, everyone. We are going to have a Symbolic World Summit in Oxford, September 24th to the 26th. When, the Pusey House asked us to come and host an event there, we couldn't say no, but we're so excited about the people we're able to bring there. So you can start and tell us what's going on.
Right. So the theme for this summit is Paradise Imagined. And we are going to be looking at different depictions of paradise, of the Garden of Eden, of heaven, of the earthly paradise, throughout ancient and medieval literature. We have an incredible lineup. Dr. Martin Shaw will be there telling us stories. We'll have Aidan Hart, Father Jacob Siemens, Father Andrew Stephen Damick, yourself, myself. It's going to be just an incredible event. And it won't all just be talks. We're going to spend some time in Pusey House, hearing stories and doing lectures and so on. But then we're going to also spend a lot of time around Oxford. So if you've ever wanted to go and do the Oxford things, go to C.S. Lewis's house and drink in the pubs and get a tour of the town and things like this. Like if you've ever wanted to do the Oxford thing, think about you could do it with Martin Shaw. Obviously, of course, me and Jonathan. But I mean, come on, bumming around Oxford with Dr. Martin Shaw. Can you imagine anything better than that?
Yeah, and it's only 150 tickets, so it's going to be very intimate. That's why we don't have like a VIP. Everybody will all be together, and a lot of people are going to be there. Paul Kingsnorth is coming. Heather Pollington will be there. Also, even Mary Harrington is going to come. And there's a lot of other people that are going to come that are not the official speakers, but we're all going to be, it's going to be an amazing time with all these people together.
Yeah. So we know it's a weird time in the world right now to travel and everything else. But if you can possibly make it, I think this will be an incredible event. And again, it's a small event. There's actually a lot of risk putting on an event this small, but I'm just really excited about it. So I hope you'll join us.
Thrand is the name of the first king to rule over Thrandheim. He had a son called Eric, a well-liked man even from a young age. He was strong in body, brave, and excelled at everything, grew up big. It's told that one Yule Eve, Eric made a solemn vow to travel the whole world in search of the place which heathen men call the Deathless Acre, and Christians the land of living folk, or paradise. This vow became famous throughout Norway. The following summer, Eric fits out a magnificent ship and sets sail for Denmark. There are 12 in his ship. The king of the Danes had a son himself who was also called Eric. Now, I'm just saying that these the main two guys of the story are both named Eric. So we're going to just have to keep them clear. Okay. The saga does a pretty good job of letting you know which one. Okay, but you got Norwegian Eric, and then there's Danish Eric. Okay, yeah. Okay. The Danish king and his son Eric Thrander, and his son invited Eric Thrandarson, so that's Norwegian Eric, to stay the winter with them, and he accepted. The two Erics became friends and entered into partnership, and they were alike in many respects. And in the following spring, Eric the Dane decided to join his namesake on the expedition. His party also consisted of 12. They sailed now and headed for Miklagard, and they arrived there just as the Greek king was raising an army to fight against raiders who were making frequent attacks on his realm. And when the king of the Greeks heard of the Norsemen's arrival, he asks to see them and receive them with honor, asking them who they were and where they came from and which way they were bound. Eric says they're Norsemen, king's sons, and that they mean to travel widely, exploring the world. Then the Greek king honored them exceedingly well in all respects. And when they'd been there for some time, they performed many great deeds with boldness and much good sense, and defended the realm of the Greek king very well. And when the king saw that they were stronger than just about any other men in the land, he prized them highest of all and bestowed on them ranks and distinctions and honors, and even took them into his service. And he employed them on the best terms out of all his men. It's said that this was the first time Norsemen took honors out in Miklagard. Okay, so that's part one, and I just want to give a few historical bits to kind of help us understand what's going on here. The first thing is this vow that Eric the Norwegian, Eric Thrandarson, that he makes. He makes it at Yule, which is the feast that is basically a solstice feast in Norse paganism, but basically becomes Christmas. I mean, it's just they're so connected, right? That it basically is Christmas. I mean, even these days, if you buy a Yule log, you're not offering up prayers to Thor or whatever. It's a Christmas thing that you're doing, No one is, well, I mean, maybe somebody, I don't know. So this vow that he takes, this is a ritual oath, okay? And you see this is a trope you see in a lot of sagas. And it is called, my Old Norse is not great, but it is called the Heitstrenging. This is a ritual oath that's it's always made that they're going to perform a future action, like some big act of heroism, right? And this is done publicly. Like, this is not just something you do, in your heart. This is done publicly at a big banquet, very often at Yule. So this is one of the very characteristically Norse things about this story, is that there's this Yule oath. It can also happen at weddings, banquets, big public holidays. The whole point is that it's public. It is originally a pagan practice for sure, but it continues on even after Christianization. People keep doing it, although there's clearly some alterations. As originally practiced, typically there's a lot of drinking involved, and usually you don't make the Heitstrenging until you have had a few. Which seems completely normal. People often talk big after they've had a few.
The drunk oaths are always the best oaths. You always say the most reasonable thing when you're drunk.
Exactly. In the pagan practice, it seems that in some cases they would lay their hands on a holy pig that would be sacrificed later. So that's kind of connecting with the act of sacrifice. So this continues on, even after Christianization, right? Okay, so the next thing I wanted to mention is that this happens in the first place they go is Miklagard, which basically is Old Norse for the great city. So where is this? Well, despite
Constantinople?
It's Constantinople.
So they're Varangians, basically.
Basically, yeah. So you notice at the end, the Greek king takes them into his service, right?
Yeah.
They become Varangians. What's really fascinating about this, and the next part of this is them in Constantinople, in Miklagard, right?
Yeah.
The big city. Actually, it's a fun thing. So if in the U.S. someone says, I'm going to the big city, what's the first place that people might think of? And that would be New York, right? I'm going to the big city. Yeah. What's fun is that New York, of course, has the nickname the Big Apple.
Yeah.
Constantinople was also called the Apple. Really? So there's a weird, there's a weird kind of parallel between these places, Anyway, so what's really fascinating is, this is written in the very beginning of the 14th century, roughly 1300, and this is actually the point in the Middle Ages that the Church of Rome has kind of the strongest sway over the Scandinavian church. Right? This is not the early missionary period, which is still prior to the Great Schism. This is later when it's really been Latinized. Yeah. And yet there's a sense in which the big city that they need to go to is Constantinople.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
So, and it's with the detail about the Varangians and that these are the first Norsemen to come and be Varangians. Yeah. the suggestion is that the time of this story, even though it was written in 1300, the
Yeah.
time of the story is much, much earlier.
Yeah.
So, any comments on this first part, the
No, I
big
mean, it's
vow
really
and whatever?
interesting. It's so fascinating to it's fascinating too that they in the vow that they say it's both, like it's the pagan place and the Christian place. Basically, it's two kind of map onto each other. I kind of find that interesting and fascinating because this was clearly written, deeper, like a few centuries now, after the conversion.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely it can help you understand how it is that they perceive their own conversion as well as not
right.
just a replacement of their ancient world, but rather as a kind of completion of their ancient thinking.
One of the things that you see from this era of Christianity in Norway is many of the churches, the stave churches, these amazing,
Yeah.
Viking churches or whatever, on the doorposts on the outside of the church, you will often see there, and these are in museums. Like this is known. This is not someone's speculation. There are carvings that are on the outside, and you might think that you're going to go up and you're going to see scenes from the Gospels, saints' lives, whatever. There are multiple cases in which, in fact, particularly this one in particular that's very famous called the Helestad Stave Church, where you see the story of the Volsunga saga.
Mm-hmm.
The story of the cursed gold and the killing of Fafnir the dragon. Like this is on the outside of the church. This would be the equivalent, like if you went to Greece and you saw on the outside of the church, you saw, the tales of Hercules and so forth, or Heracles, if you saw that on the outside, that would be the equivalent.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we probably never had it that much, but I was talking to Mario Bagos about how Constantinople was laid out. And, he was explaining that a lot of the heroes, especially the statues of the heroes, were kept in the gardens outside. So the city was organized as a hierarchy where you would only have, let's say, sacred imagery in the church. But then as you went down the hill and you went into the public spaces, that they would have all kinds of Roman spolia that was different characters, from their stories.
That's interesting. The parallel, and maybe this might be a little bit spicy, but the parallel that occurs to me, especially thinking back 6 years ago here in North America, is there was this big push, of course, to tear down lots of different statues. But then there was also some more level-headed people that say, well, let's put them in museums.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of museumification or kind of a lesser sacredness, not in the public square, but, kind of we'll keep it, but kind of have it off to the side or whatever. And I think that's part of what's going on, frankly, with these Norse churches is that there's a lesser sacredness.
Yeah.
It's on the outside of the church. It is literally profanum, outside the temple, but as close to the temple as you could possibly get without being inside.
Right.
As if to say, okay, here's the next part of our story is Christ.
Yeah, well, that's why if you go to Athos, you go to Greek, a lot of monastic Greek churches. Yeah, they have the philosophers in the narthex.
Yeah, and even like Herodotus, right? Historians, stuff are out there. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's a curious thing that I think makes some people feel a little uncomfortable who want everything kind of laid out in Puritan ways, like pure perfection on this side, absolute darkness on this side, and that's just not how Christian history.
Yeah, we love hierarchy. I don't know what to say, right? Hierarchy is wonderful.
Exactly. Okay, now we're going to move into part 2, and this is the part that I'm actually going to skip some parts of this, because it kind of goes on a bit, and I'll explain why that is as I go here. So this is part 2, which is called Eric Stayed in Miklagard. It's said that one day Eric of Norway asked the king, "Who made heaven and earth?" The king says, "One made them both." Eric asked, "Who is that?" The king answers, "God Almighty, who is one God, but of 3 aspects." Eric said, "What are these 3 aspects?" The king says, "Consider the sun. In it there are 3 aspects, fire, brightness, and heat, and yet it's all one sun. So also in God. There's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and yet he's one in omnipotence." Eric said, "He is a great God, this one, to have made heaven and earth. Tell me now something of his greatness." The king said, "God is one, alone, without equal, and unsurpassable. He's above all things and endures all things, and he holds the end of the earth in his hands." And then Eric goes on to ask, does God know all things? Now, this is the part we're going to skip ahead. And I'm just going to explain what's going on here. What proceeds from here is actually almost a direct quotation from the oldest Icelandic catechism.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening here is Eric is getting catechized.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah,
Right.
and is framing their catechistic thinking as coming from the Greeks, as kind of
That's right.
coming from this world. Yeah, super
Again, very
interesting.
surprising, at this point in history that this is the way that they would tell the story. So it goes on like this. It's a series of questions and answers, just like traditional Western catechisms go. And, the Greek king proceeds to tell him about God, gives him some ethical instruction, kind of the shape of the world, all of this, which of course is going to be the part that's really interesting for us. And he's catechizing him. Right? So I'm going to pick up here now where Eric starts asking about the shape of the world, because of course that's really key to our story. Eric asked, "How far is it between heaven and earth?" "You are curious, Eric," says the king. "From earth to the highest heaven, it's said to be 100,385 miles." Eric asked, "What lies around the outside?" Yeah, exactly. You can measure it, I mean, these are still medieval people, okay?
Yeah.
Eric asked, "What lies around the outside of the earth?" "A great sea, which is called ocean." Which, I mean, that's the Greek conception, right? Is there's a big ocean on the outside. Eric asked, "What is the most distant land in the southern part of the world?" The king answered, you're going to love this, "India land, we say, marks the ends of the earth in that part of the world."
Yeah.
Yes, all your universal history fans should be
That's right.
showing
That's
up
what
now
it
for
is. I
this
mean,
one.
you see it in Alexander the Great, right? He goes to see the naked philosophers in India.
Exactly. Eric asked, "Where is that place which is called the Deathless Acre?" The king says, "We call that paradise, or the living land." So again, there's your parallel, pagan language, Christian language. Eric asked, "Where is it situated?" The king says, "The country is east of furthest India." Eric asked, "Can I get there?" "I don't know about that," says the king. "A wall of fire stands before it, which reaches right up to heaven." And when the king had told Eric all that and much more besides, Eric fell at the king's feet and said, "I beg you, best of kings, for your help to speed my journey, for I stand in great need on account of my vow. For I solemnly vowed to go south through the world in search of the Deathless Acre, and I know that I have no chance of getting there without your help." The king says, "Stay the next 3 years here with us, and then go. Since you're in need of my help and you must heed all my warnings, be baptized, and I will assist you."
Huh.
Eric quizzed the king about the rewards of righteousness and the pains of hell. He asked too about the peoples and regions of the world, about seas and distant lands, and all about the eastern and southern parts of the world, about mighty kings and various islands, about deserts, and about those places they had to cross, about strange and wondrous races, and how they dressed, and the customs of many nations, about vipers and winged dragons, and all sorts of animals and birds, about great hoards of gold and jewels. And the king answered these enquiries and many others, well and wisely. After this, they were baptized, Eric and his men.
Wow, that's so interesting. It's like the self-framing of how their connection to Christianity is also first of all, a connection to civilization. And then second of all, it's a connection to knowledge, right? To a kind of more cosmic understanding, as if they're representing themselves as being isolated in the North, and that their conversion is a universalization of their position, right? In every way, both obviously in relationship to God, but then also in relationship to everything else, right? It's like they're learning about what the shape of the world is. It's really fascinating.
And now you get access to civilization.
Yeah.
Remember, of course, that the Norse basically don't have literature until Christianity comes. That's why there's no pagan. There might be a couple of runes on a couple of like helmets and stuff.
But even those runes are like they're Western languages. They're Western alphabets, folks. Come on.
That's right. But yeah, writing comes to the Norse with Christianity.
Yeah.
And so the only reason that we know the Norse myths at all is because Christian Norsemen wrote them down.
Yeah.
And frankly, centuries after the last Norse pagan was baptized.
Yeah.
So again, you can see they get baptized here. So this is an indication that this story takes place pre-Christianization. of Norway, and yet the story is being told very well post-Christianization.
Yeah, and it's being told in some ways as the Christianization of
That's
those
right.
lands, right? That's interesting.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to part 3 now. So this part 3 is called Eric Went to India. When 3 years had passed, of course, 3 years, right, is the traditional time that catechism should last.
Mhm.
You know, when 3 years had passed, and Eric had received such information and much more besides, they headed with their crew to Syria, with the seal of the Greek king, and after that go by ship and horse, but mostly they walked, journeying some years till they came to furthest India. Which to me, it's interesting that they walk, meaning that they're kind of less Viking than they had been, because the Viking is on his ship.
Yeah.
And wherever they go in strange lands, they are welcomed, and everyone helped them on their way because they had with them the letter and seal of the Greek king and the patriarch from Miklagard, which was written too on the tongues of all those people they expected to meet on the way. So it's a kind of Pentecostal
Yeah, interesting.
letter, It was also said that wherever they were or wherever they chose to travel, it was apparent how much God's grace was with them and what a friend of God the Greek king was. For wherever his letter was seen, honors were bestowed upon them and they suffered no harm. For God's mercy protected Eric and his companions, and the luck of the Greek king was with them, and his wise advice saved them much trouble on the way. I love how it's called luck, which of course is a very Germanic kind of...
Yeah, and it's really fascinating to see how the Norwegians, like how the Scandinavian people perceived Constantinople and also perceived its place in estimation to India, for goodness sake, right? It's like it's pretty astounding,
Yeah. This is the gateway to the whole
how
world.
the world was far more interconnected than a lot of modern thinkers want us to believe, that
Big
somehow
time.
the Middle Ages were this like fragmented dark age where no one were connected with each other.
Yeah. Not remotely true.
Yeah, not remotely true.
Yeah. So, okay. And when they traveled as much as 44 miles through the regions of India,
Oh, it's really not a lot.
which doesn't seem like a long distance, but if you're walking
walking
through India, that probably is a lot of
yeah,
distance.
maybe.
They came at last to dark regions where they saw stars as clearly by day as by night. So this is out in the wilderness, obviously. And I love this. All over the land, they found great lumps of gold.
Obviously, gotta get gold.
There's always
in
gold.
the South. Gold comes from the South, Father Andrew. You know that, right?
They saw this. Well, that's why I moved to the South, Jonathan.
That's right.
We welcome you anytime you want to come to the South. I think North Carolina is ready to have a rivalry with Texas to claim you. So we have the better barbecue. I will hold up Eastern Carolina barbecue against Texas barbecue, which I love anytime. But there's a hierarchy. There is a hierarchy of barbecue.
Okay. Withhold judgment,
Well, come on down. They saw many wonders besides in that land. And when they'd gone a long way through thick woods, incredibly tall, they come at last out of the forest. Then it got light and became bright, and they saw before them a great river. Over it was a bridge of stone. On the far bank of the river, they saw a beautiful country with tall flowers and plenty of honey, and from it they smelt a sweet scent. That direction was bright to look at. They saw neither hill nor height nor mountain in that country. So it's level.
It's level, yeah.
Eric realizes these must be the lands the Greek king spoke of. It dawned on him that this must be the river called Fison that flows from paradise.
Mm-hmm.
But as they neared the bridge, they saw a terrible dragon lying on it with gaping jaws, and it let out a savage-sounding roar. So this is all very expected if you know these kinds of stories. Then Eric began to make his way towards it, and he intended to get across the river somehow. But when Eric the Dane saw that, he told his namesake not to go, and he said the dragon would swallow him in no time. But Eric the Norwegian said he wasn't going to be scared of the dragon, and he won't stop my journey. Danish Eric said, I beg you, best friend, don't throw your life away. Come back with us instead, because you'll surely die if you go on. Eric said he wouldn't turn back, and they both wished each other good luck. Now Eric of Norway draws his sword and grasps it in his right hand and takes one of his companions by the left hand. They rush up and leap into the mouth of the dragon. And it looked to Eric the Dane as if the dragon swallowed them both. He turns back now with his companions, back the way they came, and after many years he comes home to his own land. Then he reported what was the last he'd seen of Eric the Norwegian, what had happened, as it seemed to him. Now this man gets to be famous because of his travels, and he was regarded as a splendid man, and that's the end of his story. And that's the end of part 3. So, yeah, there's the one who goes and the one who turns back, and they're both named Eric.
It's a nice little motif there. It's like the one that it's like the spies in the Holy Land, right? It's like the what they see, they don't see the same thing. One sees threat, one sees opportunity. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I and it's interesting. Like this could be the end of this. I mean, it's definitely the end of part of the story.
Yeah.
Right. But there's 2 more parts to go. This is just the end of part 3. So part 4 now is titled in our translation, Beyond the Dragon. Which, I mean, it could have been called, the previous one could be called Enter the Dragon, which isn't that the name of a movie? Anyway, Beyond the Dragon. All right. But when Eric the Norwegian and his companion had leapt into the dragon's mouth, it seemed they were wading through like smoke. So, wading through smoke. They seemed like they were wading through smoke. And when they came out of the smoke, they saw a beautiful land, lush and bright as satin, with sweet scents and tall flowers, and streams of honey ran all over the land in every direction. I just have to point out, by the way, like this image of sweetness connected with honey over and over again. This is another thing that kind of tells you this is a very northern story.
Yeah.
Honey is the sugar that they have. Like that's what there is, right? That's why mead is the wine that they have, right? That's honey wine, right? The country was broad and flat. And I have to say
it's still in the dragon.
Exactly.
Oh,
Broad and flat. And I have to say here, by the way, that even though I'm not a scholar of this other text, that much of what you're about to hear now is largely taken from, not word for word, but the general imagery is taken from the Apocalypse of Paul, the Visio Pauli, which I know has been discussed on Universal History before. Deacon Seraphim knows way more about this than I do, but it kind of follows that, and so this levelness of the ground is part of that imagery. Okay, there was constant sunshine there, so that it never got dark, and never cast so much as a shadow. The air was calm, but with just a little breeze on the ground, so that they smelt the sweet scent even more than before. They walked for a long time and wondered if they would see any habitations or populated districts, or how far it went on. Then they saw what looked for all the world like a column suspended in the air with nothing holding it up. As they got closer, they saw that it was a tower, hanging in the sky with no props. A ladder stood against the south side of the tower. They were amazed at the strength of whatever power was making this possible, and it all seemed very strange to them. Then they went up the ladder and into the tower. They saw that it was furnished with the most beautiful and opulent satins and velvet. There was a table standing there, beautifully prepared, and on it stood a silver dish. On that there were all sorts of tasty treats, and it was loaded with white, sweet-scented bread. There was a jug set with gold and gemstones. There was a goblet full of wine. There were beds, well made and spread with cloth of gold and fine velvet. Then Eric said, "See, here is the Deathless Acre, that we traveled so many roads and faced such trials and troubles to see." They praised God and said, "Great and good is God for letting us see all this." After that, they enjoyed the food and then went to sleep. And as Eric slept, there appeared to him a youth, bright and handsome, who said to him, "Great is the firmness of your faith, Eric. Tell me, how do you like this land?" "Very well. It's all I could have wished for. And of all the lands I've seen, this is the one I like the best. But who are you? And there's a big difference between your knowledge and mine, because you know me and call me by name, but I don't know who you are." Then the young man smiled and said, "I am God's angel, one of those who guard the gates of paradise. I was standing nearby when you vowed to go south through the world in search of the Deathless Acre. I prompted you to sail to Miklagard, and through God's foresight and my will you took baptism, and for that I call you blessed. For you heeded the good advice and warnings of the Greek king, and took his seal, and bathed in the holy Jordan. It's a great detail we just get now here. Is that there was whether he actually went to the Jordan River or just being baptized means bathing in the Jordan.
Yeah.
Same thing.
We went to Syria, but it was later that he said
That's right. That's right. Okay. But as for me, the Lord sent me to you. I am your guardian angel, and I've shielded you on land and sea from all the dangers of the journey and guarded you against all bad things. It's an interesting thing to me to note that he says he's his guardian angel, but also that he was there when he made the vow, when he was still a pagan.
Right, yeah. And also that he's the guardian of paradise, which is kind of interesting, like all those three lined
all
up together.
All this happening together.
Yeah.
That's right. And we are not human, but rather spirits dwelling in our heavenly homeland. But this place which you see here is like a wilderness compared to paradise. Though that's not so far from here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that river comes from, which you saw. So the angel's saying, this isn't the Deathless Acre. This isn't paradise. You know, this is rustic. This is out in the woods compared to the real paradise. No one gets there alive, but the souls of the righteous are to live there. And this place you found is called the land of living folk.
Mm-hmm.
And before you arrived, God commanded us to watch this place and to show you the land of living folk in some form and make a feast for you and reward you for your troubles. Then Eric asked the angel, where do you live? The angel says, we live in heaven where we gaze on the face of God, but out of necessity we are sent to earth to offer our service to humans, as you can well believe. Eric said, what holds up this tower which seems to hang in the air? The angel said, God's strength alone holds it up. From signs like this, you should have no doubt that God made the world from nothing. Eric said, I'll not doubt that. The angel asked Eric, which would you rather, stay here or go back to your own country? So this is a choice now. Eric answers, I want to go back. The angel said, why so? Eric says, because I want to tell the people I know about these glorious demonstrations of God's power. And because if I don't come back, they'll be sure I died a horrible death. The angel said, although there is now worship of heathen gods in the northern lands, the time will come when those people will be freed from delusion and God will call them to his faith. Now, I give you leave to go back to your own land and tell your friends about God's grace, what you saw and heard of it, because they'll believe in God's word and his commandments sooner when they hear such tales as this. Pray often. I will come after you some years hence and bear your soul into bliss, and I will guard your bones in that place where they are to wait the judgment. Stay here 6 days and rest yourselves, and then take provisions for the journey and head back north at last. Now the angel seemed to vanish from his sight, and Eric did just as the angel said regarding his day and departure. And that's the end of part 4. So to me, one of the things that's going on in this tower, like if I was trying to come up with a way to understand the tower and the meal and the rest, is that this is the church. This is communion.
Right. That seems to, because also even that story of how the Scandinavians came to Hagia Sophia and experienced the liturgy and then went back to see the king of the Rus, Prince Vladimir, and told him that we don't know, like, were we in heaven? Were we in paradise? It was the closest thing, you know. So I think you're right that clearly this is like a representation of the church itself.
And you said something just now that some people maybe caught but didn't know what exactly you said. The Scandinavians.
Well, yeah, everybody knows
story,
the Rus are Scandinavians.
The Rus are Scandinavians. You know, that's Vladimir is you know, he's a Norseman.
He's a Norseman.
That's ethnically who these people are. Yeah. So this is a really interesting thing. He thinks he's in heaven, or he thinks he's in paradise. We'll talk about heaven and paradise.
Yeah.
He thinks he's in paradise, but the angel tells him, no, you're not in paradise, but you're experiencing communion with God. You're experiencing rest. You know, and I want you to go, you know, he says to him, do you want to stay here? But Eric basically says, I'm going to go forth in peace in the name of the Lord.
liturgical. It's like to leave and to go back and to kind of carry that. I really love the idea that, this is also possibly a kind of interior transformation of the character through this notion of representing the guardian angel and the angel of paradise as the same angel, in the sense that it's, you could say that, when you repent, when you acquire virtues, you are in some ways getting a taste of paradise, and that is the church. But in our personal life, this transformation, so your guardian angel becomes the one that is also leading you into the small images of paradise that we have access to in our own life.
Yeah, I mean, the angel is revealed as what's called a psychopomp.
Yeah.
Right. So this is one of my favorite words to throw out at parties. I don't know. I think we go to similar parties. I don't know. Do you say psychopomp?
Because I'm like, wait, why would you? It's like say that at the party. We say that every day.
And that's what all my friends say.
Natural vocabulary.
Exactly. Yeah. So for those who don't know, a psychopomp is a guide through usually a vision, but also sometimes a tour of the other world, or a tour of the underworld, or a tour of paradise, or a tour of the whole world. Right. So like in Dante, it starts out as Virgil and eventually becomes Beatrice. The archangel Michael is traditionally a psychopomp, but psychopomps are also the spirit that takes your soul.
Right. Yeah. It's not just a visit; it's also the one that actually leads you the transition between your state and whatever next state that you're going to encounter.
And so, angels are psychopomps as we journey through this world into the next world. But then also, what's happening here with Eric is he himself, who's being sent now to be an evangelist.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah.
He says, tell the tales. He's becoming a psychopomp to his own people.
Yeah, and so it's literally the story of the Christianization of the northern people. That's what seems to be being told here. Is like, here's one Scandinavian that went out, met the king of the Greeks, converted, had an inkling of paradise, had some experience of the transformation, and then wanted to go back home to be able to bring that new experience, that new knowledge to his own people.
Exactly. So I love this, and one of the things that this says to me is that, and I think that this is true, especially now as we're in this convert surge, particularly in the Western world for the Orthodox Church. If you talk to a lot of the people that are converting, and I think this is the greater share. There's a lot of reasons that people give, especially if they talk about maybe their initial exposure to the Orthodox faith, a lot of different reasons. But the thing that makes them stay is we knew not whether we were in heaven or on earth.
Mm-hmm.
It's well, I went there and I sampled paradise. I wanted, like my own bishop, Metropolitan Saba, has said that when he talks to people all over the country, about all over the U.S., and he goes to Canada too, because he's got Canada also, about why they became Orthodox, he says that they tell him, he gets told over and over again, we wanted a deep spiritual life.
Yeah.
And so to me, this is the great telling of the gospel, is to say, let me tell you about what I have seen and heard. Okay. The final part.
Which is not finished yet. This just seems
no, it's not done.
Go back home. I guess he has to go back home. That's true.
It's not done. Yeah, he has to go back home. So it's called Eric's Return.
All right.
After resting as long as the angels said, they climbed down from the tower, and they go on till they reach the river. By the way, this kind of where you hear past tense and present tense, that's how it is in the Norse. So it's this kind of movement that's going on, that kind of is the effect of it, right? Then a great darkness comes over them. They come up out of the dragon's mouth and resume their journey and see many wonders. But even so, which of course, the dragon's mouth is kind of a hell mouth, kind of the gateway to Hades, but also another liminal.
Super interesting that it's in the dragon, in the sense that clearly they are seeing death as the passage, right, to this other world. That in some ways, you could kind of understand it positively as the sacrifice. That is this notion that it is through sacrifice that you enter, and it's all obviously Christ went through Hades to get to paradise, right? We don't tend to think of
it's all happening.
Well, actually, the way up is down, right? You go through and up. So it's a real surprising insight.
Is it I mean, if someone wanted to kind of give an easy way to describe, is it what we would call a near-death experience? Is that what Eric is having here? Maybe. But also to be baptized into the church, of course, to be baptized into Christ's death. If we have a
Yeah.
death like his, we'll have a resurrection like his. But also there is something about communion, which is what this moment that he's experiencing is, in my opinion,
Mm.
is the height of it. There's something about communion that is a little death. You're tasting immortality. It's the medicine for immortality, but it also burns away whatever is deathly
Yeah.
in you at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you're experiencing life and death all at once. Every communion is a harrowing of Hades,
Mm. Yeah, that's
right?
right.
Right. So, yeah, I love how all the layers in this. And it's interesting, by the way, when I was researching this, one of the things I discovered is a lot of scholars of Norse literature are not interested in this story at all because it's
Really?
so Christian.
So Christian.
It's so Christian. I mean, he gets baptized for crying out loud,
Yeah.
Just got to ruin it. Okay. Great darkness. Yeah, they climb up out of the dragon's mouth, but even so, no harm befalls them, and they become enlightened with much wisdom. We have seen the true light. We have experienced and received the Holy Spirit. And after 4 years, they come to Miklagard. And Eric tells the king of his travels, and the king is amazed he made it back and has him stay for 3 years. After that, Eric gets ready and leaves Miklagard and goes north to Norway, and everyone was glad to see him. He was there 10 years. And in the 11th winter, there was one day he went early to pray. Then the Spirit of God took him, and they looked for Eric, but he wasn't found.
Oh my goodness.
Eric had told, past perfect, his dream to his companions, the one that he dreamt in the tower. Interesting, he calls it a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah? And this man passed it on. And he believed that an angel of God must have taken Eric and kept him safe. This Eric was called Eric the Traveler. This story has been confirmed by many witnesses from his own words. Now we'll leave the story there, although they don't. And there's 2 more paragraphs. And he who set this adventure down first in this book, which he wrote, did so because he wants everyone to know that there is no real help except through God. Because though heathen men may get great fame by their deeds and feats of valor, there's a big difference when they get to the end of this temporary life, since they've had their reward from human praise for their courage, but they can expect nothing but punishments for their sins and lack of faith, as they didn't recognize their Maker. But those who have loved God and put all their faith in him and acted according to the spirit of holy Christianity, they will get more praise from the wisest men. And also, what's more, when they've gone forth through the universal door of death, from which no flesh may save itself, then they'll have their reward. That is the difference. Everlasting life with Almighty God without end, just like this Eric, of whom we have just now said. So the last word, at least in the English translation, is said. Said, of course, cognate with the word saga. In other words, and that's our saga.
Yeah,
As we've now said our saga.
Yeah, that last part I don't like as much. It's like super moralized.
Yes, of course. But that's just a reminder that this is,
this is definitely a sermon here. But
yeah.
but I do like that. It's a weird idea that in some ways he was taken, like kind of taken up, in a kind of Elijah fashion. There seems to be that the type of suggestion.
and like there's it's not explicit here, but it sounds almost like maybe that Eric didn't really tell except a couple of people what happened to him. And then after his death, this vision, this experience gets spread, which means that this is very like, although I don't think this is, it's very like a saint's life.
Right. It does sound like a saint's life for sure, the way that it ends for sure, and how it all comes together. I'm kind of sad that he didn't get to show up Eric the Dane, though. Like, I was kind of hoping there'd be a little bit of a kind of, oh, wait, no.
Well, I mean, the implication here is that Eric the Dane got his glory in this life.
That's right. And then he didn't. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So I don't know what they're saying by that, but yeah, he comes back home and it says he's very famous because he tells all his big traveler's tales.
Yeah, that's right.
And yet this is the real Eric the Traveler. And like I said, a lot of saints' lives have these elements to them where there's a miracle or something like that, and then the saint says, "Don't tell anyone what happened until after I'm dead." And that seems to be what's happening here, although it's not made
Yeah,
really
it's not as
explicit.
strong, but it's following a similar trope for sure.
Yeah. So okay, so there is this language of paradise, and I know that the thing that you particularly wanted to talk about is what is the difference between paradise and heaven.
Mhm.
And it should be said that in Orthodox liturgical texts, and many times in saints' lives as well, that paradisos, right, paradise, and uranos, heaven, are often kind of used interchangeably.
Mhm.
But there actually is a distinction between these two things.
Yeah.
And the angel tells Eric, look, the land of the righteous departed is paradise, and they're over there. It's not far from here. It's not far
Mhm.
from here, and they're over there, right? So what's the difference? So in dogmatic terms, right? The difference between, and which is not exactly necessarily the same as the way that it plays out in all of the stories.
Yeah.
But in dogmatic terms, the difference between the two is that paradise, in its most sort of technical sense, refers to the experience of the saints um, prior to the resurrection,
Mhm.
and that the life of the age to come is the heavenly experience, and that is the life of the resurrection. Now, paradise is also used, of course, and this is kind of the usage, right, to refer to the Garden of Eden. So what that means is that the saints, from our point of view, I don't know about from their point of view. I'm not a saint. I'm not dead. From our point of view, the saints are experiencing something at least like, or maybe a restoration of what Adam had and was meant to have at the beginning. And yet there's actually
more.
something above that that
Yeah.
Adam didn't have yet.
Mm.
And that something above is the reason why the devil falls, because he sees that Adam is destined for that thing above. And it's interesting that the angels, when they interact with humans, are servants. They're helping the humans. They're not commanding humans.
Mhm.
In all the stories, that's the way it always is
Yeah.
in all the stories. So, okay, so I don't know what do you want to do with all that in terms of both of our stories here, and what earthly paradise and heaven, and what's happening.
I like that idea. I mean, I do like the idea that in some ways heaven is something that would be akin to theosis, whereas paradise is the kingly earthly aspect of the transformation, which is that in some ways reaching the top of what a human was meant to be, let's say in creation, but that there is still there's something more. Like there is this capacity to participate in God in a way that the mystics obviously referred to always with a little bit of trepidation and mystery, but that we're called in some ways to something more. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that idea.
I mean, and it seems like you get all kinds of language in scripture that points towards this. He was made a little lower than the angels, but he was crowned with glory and honor.
Mm.
Do you not know that in the life of the age to come, we shall judge angels? Winning will be above them,
Oh,
right?
that's right.
Which
Yeah.
this is what Satan saw. This is what he was
Yeah.
mad about.
Yeah.
And it says in the scripture, and by that I mean the director's cut of the scripture, it's including wisdom, Sirach, and this kind of stuff, that the devil fell because of envy. But I mean, the church fathers all repeat this too. The devil fell because of envy, because he wanted what Adam was being offered, but had not yet received.
Mm.
But I think also, like, it's important to note, like, what's going on in terms of church. Eric sees church as paradise. Well, of course he should. Our churches are designed to be paradise.
That's right. Yeah.
There's it's not just they're beautiful and glorious. It's that why do they always have like vines and grapes and flowers and all this kind of stuff? Although I have to say there's a church of the Greek Archdiocese in Worcester, Massachusetts, St. Spiridon Cathedral, and you look up in the dome, and the image of paradise includes pine trees, which I think a Canadian should be able to get behind that. Yeah.
Obviously, there are pine trees in paradise.
Obviously. Yeah. We have pine trees in North Carolina, by the way, Jonathan. Yeah. We have the longleaf pine. This is the land of the longleaf pine. That is in our state.
When I don't expect it, the attack comes when I don't expect it.
That is in our official state toast. Here's to the old North State. Here's to the land of the longleaf pine.
There you go.
So
There
you'll
you go.
feel very at home here for a good 5
But
minutes when it's actually cold in North Carolina.
one of the things I really love about the story, and I think that is beautiful also about this kind of image of paradise, is that if you read the fathers, I did one time a talk about where I showed really clearly how in so many of the mystical fathers they talk about the heart as being the church, right? So there really is a fractal image of the heart as being this little cosmic image that has heaven and earth and the serpent coiled below and a ladder that connects heaven and earth, and that in some ways that's also what the church is as the communal body that has the very same structure, that ultimately that's what the entire cosmos is. And I love how in the story, right, there's this ambiguity about where is he, because he says this is not the fullness, this is like a smaller participation in it. We say it's the church, but he also seems to hint, because he talks about a dream, how it's also this inner life, like there's also something about the inner life which is being reflected. But
Yeah.
that's what's amazing about what you can do in a story, is that you can actually refer to it different iteration at the same time, because you're using this imagery that is pointing in many directions. So really, I think it's really a powerful structure.
And the
Yeah.
image of the tower as the church, like this isn't Shepherd of Hermas, of course. And but I mean, St. Paul refers to us as God's building.
Yeah, that's right.
So like all this is happening. And yeah, I you use the word ambiguity. I think that's a really important thing when talking about paradise and the church and heaven and earth and all of these things, is that there's not like hard lines between
Not a
them.
system. Yeah, it's not a
It's
system.
not a system.
Yeah,
And each
that's very
layer
important.
participates in the other layers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All of that is going on at the same time. And this is what I think, that this traditional hierarchical understanding of the world and of what Christianity is, um, this is why it's also profoundly hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your world has a hard ceiling, there's no hope in this world.
Mm-hmm.
There's just waiting. There's just waiting. And I think that, you have to forgive me. I'm a preacher, okay? So I'm gonna, just give me 10 seconds. I'm gonna preach a little bit.
Okay.
But I think that someone who has no hope in this world and is simply told, well, just wait
Till you die. Yeah, that's
wait
right,
until you
yeah.
die, and then it's going to be better. Like this is this is the satirical, parodic, reduced version of Christianity that a lot of people very rightly don't believe in.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I'm just supposed to believe all my life, and then I hope when I die. Like this is the frame of Pascal's wager, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
It could be better to hope, better to be faithful, because you're going to die no matter what. Maybe, but Orthodox Christianity, with all of its with the iconography, with the ritual participation, with the architecture, with the music, with its asceticism, with its hesychasm, all of this says paradise is on earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not, because of our sinfulness, we're not completely there yet, but it does kind of peek through. It does, and occasionally it blazes through.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We're in the midst of, or about to, if you're on the old calendar, celebrating the Transfiguration. That's where the light, and it's amazing. The Transfiguration happens on a mountain. I mean,
That's right.
of course, is there any other place that it should happen? Like, where else could it possibly be?
Or maybe on a very level place as well. Like that's what's interesting about the symbolism, is how
Yes.
you understand why paradise could be represented as a mountain, because it's this ascent, but also as a particularly level
Right.
place, because it is like that reflection of heaven, that pure reflection of heaven.
It's what's in Isaiah. Every valley will be exalted and every mountain will be brought low. We all hear, Handel's Messiah in our head, right? When you say every valley will be exalted. That's an image there, right? Of, as the forerunner says in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight.
Yeah, that's the image. Yeah.
The straight road.
Yeah.
All of that is going on together, and the beauty of it is, like you said, it's not a system. You don't have to sort it out.
No.
Just enter into it and just like glory in it. Yeah. Thank God. Okay.
This
Sermon
has been so
over.
much fun, Father Andrew. Look, I think that this is making me look forward to our time, definitely our time in Oxford as well. I can't wait to see also what you come up. I'm like you've given us so much. What are you going to talk about when we're there?
I'm going to talk about the devil.
All right.
I'm talking about the devil. Yeah. My talk, I don't have the title in front of me, is something like The Devil's Key to Paradise.
All right.
So that's where we're going with that. So I want to do something a little edgy. So
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Father Andrew, as usual, for your time, and also just everything you do. We're on these parallel paths all the time, trying to bring back the beauty of all these stories and also show how they point to Christ. So thank you for everything you do.
and likewise to you, I'm very happy to be in both an alliance and a friendship and brotherhood in Christ with you, Jonathan.
And everyone else, we will see you very soon here on our channel. But also, if you can, it would be great to see you in Oxford. We're definitely going to be there and have a great time. So thanks, everyone. Talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.